Before we start, this image of Spider-Man is drawn by Lars Redfield on DeviantArt. The link will be in the description. Spider-Man's motto has always been, with great power comes great responsibility. But what if he never had the power in the first place? The entire point of DC's new Absolute storylines is to take our familiar characters and remove one vital aspect of them, such as Batman is now poor, Wonder Woman is now trained by demons, and Superman is now edgy. So that's my pitch. But you've seen the length of the video, so let's go a teeny bit more into detail. The story opens with Spider-Man standing on a rooftop, leaning forwards. He began to stretch his bulky shoulders, preparing to leap. He mutters to himself, 2 years and this still hasn't gotten any easier. He leaps unceremoniously, his limbs flailing in the air. He then dives, the wind rushing through the uniquely minimal baggy areas of his suit. Double tapping his web shooter attached to his wrist with a button fastened onto his gloved palm, silver web fluid shot out and stuck onto the skyscraper positioned northeast of himself. Suddenly, he looked down, realising how close he was to the ground. A common issue. Diving from rooftops gives you such a rush you often forget that you have to come back up again. The other issue, the realisation hitting him first, and soon enough the impact knocking him out on the second, was the fact that he was currently swinging into a man with a machine gun aimed at his head. He lifted his chiselled legs in the air and pointed his toes towards the sky. A large impact, almost like an earthquake, echoes from the man's face, which had taken the majority of the impact. Spider-Man, now on the ground in a bent over, prepared for battle position, took advantage of the man's current winded nature. He leaped into the air and spun around, whipping his right foot through the air as hard as he could, it eventually connecting with the man's face and knocking him out. Spider-Man landed on the ground and sighed, looking at the destruction present around him. The narration begins. I'm not quite sure yet if this is just the result of teenage illusion still creeping up on me, of not really growing up yet, but currently, he looks at all the men aiming guns at him and screaming. They all fire. Spider-Man web swings away. The men look around and suddenly Spider-Man swings up behind them and kicks them mid-air. Leaping to the nearest gunman, he socks them in the face with all his might. Then with his heart beating so hard it felt like it might start pumping air, he lifted the man up, presenting him to the others by holding him above his head. He then chucked the man's body at the others. Zipping away, he web-swinged around, picking them off one by one. The narration continues. Currently, this isn't even the main thing on my mind. No. 21 years old, and I'm still chasing ghosts. 3 hours ago. Spider-Man, Zach, picks up his phone and presses on the same number that had been listed multiple times, the number that he had started calling unintentionally on a bi-weekly basis. Hello, he said into his phone, nervous at the answer he thought he could already hear coming from the other line. Yes, hello dear, this is Zach calling, correct? A soft, old woman's voice asked on the other end of the line. Hello, Diana. Zach started with his crusade that's practically submitted to his memory at this point. I was wondering if you'd got the results of the DNA test back? I know I keep asking, but I really have to know. Yes, dear, it'll be not long now. I'd be flabbergasted if it took till the end of the week, or even the end of today. Zach smiled unconfidently. Are you sure that's true, or is that just the optimist in you coming out? Zach could hear her chuckle on the other end. Oh, you are funny. Yes, maybe so. But the matching DNA is on public record. A strong link, they say. Very rare. Maybe I'm related to someone famous, huh? Zach replied. Like Peter Parker, she practically yelled, howling with laughter. Then, recorrecting herself, she made sure she got on the record. You do still like Spider-Man, right? You did when you were a boy. I never knew if... Well... Yes, I suppose I do still like Spider-Man, he said, rubbing a yellow bruise on the right of his upper lip. Shame what happened to that kid. I really thought... Yeah, it's awful someone that inspirational can go out just like that. Diana couldn't hear it, but she imagined Zach snapping his fingers after finishing his sentence. You aren't taking the test to see if you're related to him, are you? It'd explain where those muscles are from. Zack chuckled. Come on, you know it's bigger than that. My life doesn't revolve around Spider-Man anymore. Plus, who knows? Maybe Brad Pitt is my dad. As he says this, his adopted sister walks into the room. Anyway, I gotta go. Surprisingly, I have other things to do than chasing ghosts. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, I suppose, he replies. Just make sure it doesn't become your priority. Your priority should be getting a job. How's a handsome, smart guy like you not have some, I don't know, even some mind-numbing IT grunt work job? You like computers? Well, I'll think about it, okay? Anyway, bye now. He hangs up. His sister gives him an eyebrow. What? Zack asks defensively. My life doesn't revolve around Spider-Man anymore, she says sarcastically, quoting him. I'd beg to differ. I have other things. Like? None of your business. Whatever it is, all I know is I am not. Cut back to the present. His adopted sister speaks through the monitoring system of his suit. I am not your guy in the chair. This is the last time. Spider-Man jokes as he leaps towards the guy, grasping his collar, spinning and throwing him, crashing into a wall. You said that last time. I'm serious. She pauses. Someone behind you. Spider-Man spins around his leg on the ground, tripping the man behind him, tightly grasping a machete. He hits the ground with a big oomph. Spider-Man then realizes something, running towards the man on the ground. Hey you, you're the man who gave me a massive bruise on my lip. How the hell did you get out of prison so quick? The answer slithered out of his mouth with considerable pain. Broken justice system, he grinned. Spider-Man nodded as if to say, fair enough. Then webbed the man up. Suddenly, the large police van breaks open. The Rhino and Vulture walk out. They have big grins on their face until they see Spider-Man. What the hell is the fake webhead doing here? Fake? How dare you? In the middle of Spider-Man's sentence, Vulture leaps onto him and pins him onto the ground with his robotic claws. I distinctly remember being there, watching the life drain from his eyes. I remember the Green Goblin finally getting his revenge. Retribution. Spider-Man punches Vulture as hard as he can in the face and pushes against his chest with his legs, pushing the mechanical monster far away, straight into the Rhino. They crash into each other, both roaring with anger and pain. Jeez, Spider-Man said, standing up and preparing for battle. Get a room, you two. Vulture flies into the air, slashing at Spider-Man with his claws. He dodges at the perfect second. That's homophobic, man. A deep voice coming from the rhinoceros costume, if it could even be called a costume anymore. It more embodied a mech. No, I support you two, don't worry. I always kinda knew, you know, he joked as he grasped onto the fleeing Vulture with his webs, spun around and chucked him into the ground nearby. The Vulture yelled in pain and frustration. Looking over at his comrade Rhino, his frustration grew as he saw him sitting down and picking up loose bits of concrete. He screamed in anger and started flying over to the nearby skyscraper. Ha ha ha! What will you do now, freak? Spider-Man stopped in his tracks as soon as the Vulture started flying up the building. He took a deep breath, then started running as hard as he could up towards the building. Yet when he got to it, peculiarly, he didn't stop. He ran straight up to it, and as soon as his right foot made contact with the wall, a blue energy powered purely by his technical genius activated. It tightened around the sole and ankle of his feet, positioning it there. Putting his left foot forward, his right foot let go as soon as the left made contact, and so on and so forth. He was sprinting up the building. Eventually, the webhead caught up towards the Vulture and shot 2 webs into the windows in front of them. He then pulled his whole body forward, lifting his legs up. He kicked the Vulture into the building, screaming, "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!" The Vulture, winded, gets to his feet and says, "Careful, there are kids watching," pointing at the news helicopter following and recording them. Well, I was never too good at PR, Spider-Man shouts as he dodges another attack and socks the Vulture in the jaw, knocking him to the ground. The adrenaline rushing, he knew this was his chance. He grabbed the wings of the criminal, twisting and tearing as much as he could manage, yet nothing would budge. The vulture cackled, slashing at Spider-Man once again with his grotesque claws. This time he blocked with his forearm, leaving a nasty scratch. Spider-Man screams out in a mixture of pain and anger, shooting a truckload, a mountain of webbing all over the vulture, trapping him onto the floor for what would seem indefinite. Spider-Man starts to walk away, but Vulture pipes up from underneath the webs. Wait! It's hard to breathe under here. Spider-Man puts his hand on his chin, deep in thought. He is next seen swinging away from the building. The image pans down to reveal a singular straw poking out of the webs to help him breathe. Spider-Man swings around the building, the rubber of the police van and the men he had webbed up previously. He still couldn't find that damn rhino. Eventually, he dropped to the ground, making sure to be careful of exactly the distance his knees could handle receiving the blow of. He looked around, curiously. I'm looking for a 6'5" massive rhinoceros. How hard could it be? Suddenly, Spider-Man hears yelling. He turns around and is instantly grasped in a cold, iron grip. The rhino has grasped him tightly, charging towards a now incoming wall. His adopted sister's voice blared on his suit's embedded earpiece. Watch out, your body hits that wall. That's 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, maybe a broken spine, and even death. Yeah, he says, you worry too much. He stopped his words dead as soon as he saw how close he was to the wall of the skyscraper behind him. Jesus Christ, okay, action stations. He pulls something out of his utility belt. It looks like a small yet thick nozzle. He attaches it to his right web shooter and tapped as hard as he could onto the activation button on his palm, twice. Suddenly, webs covered in white-hot lightning shot out of the web shooters, covering the rhino in a haze of energy. He dropped Spider-Man in agony and, still blinded, accidentally rammed into the wall. He yelled multiple things in Russian that Spider-Man did not yet understand. If Rhino keeps this charade up long enough, I'll be fluent by the end of the year, he thought. Rhino yanked his horn out of the wall as hard as he could and regained his composure, gritting his teeth in blood-red anger. He shouted at the top of his lungs, Boy, you think you're better than everyone else? Than me? We are just the same. The 2 powerless kids on the playground, armed with the biggest, hottest toys. Yeah, Spider-Man began. We are the same. Suddenly he leaped into the air and shot a web to the left of the rhino. Yet my toys are better. Here, get a closer look at these new kicks. He propelled himself forwards and gave Rhino a spin kick to the head, landing gracefully just like a spider beside him. Rhino charges at him and throws a punch with all his body weight. The spectacular Spider-Man focused and weighed his options. Here's what he decided upon. Spider-Man caught the punch, pushing back as much as his human body would allow. However, he knew it couldn't last. Using the momentum of the block, he pushed the fist to his left, spinning his body to the right and jumping in the air. He then expertly shot a web next to the rhino, tugging himself forwards and giving him a decisive kick to the face. Rhino collapsed onto the ground with such force that Spider-Man could have sworn he heard the ground cracking. He gave a proud smile under his bright red webbed mask, making sure to web down any parts of Rhino that he could see. Suddenly he heard the sound of a helicopter's blade churning. He turned around to see practically an army of police officers zooming towards him. Well, that's my cue to leave. Have fun, Rhiney, Spider-Man said, shooting 2 webs to skyscrapers either side of him at the very end of the street. He pulled back as far as he could manage, keeping his feet strong on the ground. As soon as he was ready, he relaxed his legs. Whoosh! His entire body was propelled with great speed through the city. He opened up his arms, letting his web wings catch the air. He started to glide, to soar like an angelic figure. Suddenly his phone started to buzz. He pulled it out from his special and extra important phone compartment on his trusty utility belt. It was a call from Diana. It had to be news. It had to be the answer. It just had to be. He picked up the phone. Zach walked down the street, the words of the phone call still buzzing in his mind. They found a DNA match. It traces to someone who lives in the big house on Alton Street. The mansion, Diana said. Oh, so my dad's rich, Zach joked back. He walked up the steps of the ridiculously enormous house and rung the doorbell. He waited for a few minutes. The anticipation felt like it could kill him. He began to sweat bullets and his heart was racing extremely fast. Maybe this was all a mistake, he thought. Maybe he should just go home. There's a high chance his father might not even want anything to do with him. It was then that the door opened. It was then that Zach's biological father, Norman Osborn, stepped outside and greeted him. The end. So what did you think? I personally am very proud of it. Please leave your feedback in the comments below, especially if you'd like a part 2. Also, I'd like to mention that yes, while the Absolute series has always had the same names of characters, I really wanted to shake it up by having Peter Parker already dead and like someone who didn't have any powers to step up, the whole with great power responsibilities but on its head. Anyway, that's kind of all I had to say. This video took me an extremely long time to make. I started this like when the Absolute series first came out, so quite a while. But there will be more like it. Just stay tuned. Please consider subscribing. Alright, see ya.